I am Liz, and through a curious twist of fate, I find myself bound to the most remarkable man I've ever encountered. Alex, we're both 28, proud owners of our cozy abode, diligently covering our bills while crafting a life uniquely. A year has passed since we exchanged vows, and truth be told, life has been quite pleasant, except for a singular complication: Alex's parents. Now, don't get me wrong. I never anticipated playing the role of the knight in shining armor as the daughter-in-law. However, I certainly didn't envision becoming the family's unwelcome guest either. The inaugural encounter with my in-laws felt akin to entering a lion's den with a stake strapped to my neck. Jane, my mother-in-law, possessed a knack for scrutinizing me, as though pondering whether I was more of an inconvenience or just plain dull. It was evident that she had formed her opinion about me before I could even utter a greeting. Alex had forewarned me about his mom's assertive personality on our way to their place that first time, advising me not to take it too personally. Despite my efforts at dinner while innocently passing the salt, Jane seized the opportunity to reminisce about Stephanie's culinary prowess, referring to me in the third person. Alex, seemingly uncomfortable, acknowledged her remarks without meeting my gaze. Feeling like an invisible presence at the table, I swallowed my discomfort with a forced smile. When I tentatively acknowledged Stephanie's cooking skills, Jane's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She seemed to be measuring me against a ghost, and I confided in Alex about feeling scrutinized. He reassured me, holding me close and affirming that I was the one he chose. Little did I know that Jane had a more intricate plan in motion, and I was unwittingly cast as the pawn in her familial chess game. Living with a severe allergy is more than just inconvenient. It's akin to having a persistent shadow whispering danger in your ear. Since childhood, peanuts have been my formidable adversaries, leading to an emergency room visit after a mere spoonful of peanut paste. Consequently, my parents received a crystal-clear directive: shield her from peanuts and an array of other foods for her well-being: soy, peas, cherries, almonds, tomatoes, apricots, bananas, and even potatoes. It's a list that raises eyebrows among waiters and prompts hesitation from friends inviting me over for dinner. Jane, my mother-in-law, is well aware of this extensive list. Nevertheless, she manages to question the restrictions every time we dine at her place. Her tone, hovering between concern and disbelief, persistently suggests that maybe I can indulge just a bit, oblivious to the potential consequences. Once at a family gathering, Jane insisted on the safety of her casserole, only for Alex to discover a potentially hazardous ingredient. Though we gracefully excused ourselves, leaving the untouched casserole behind, the incident lingered as a small victory in an ongoing battle where Jane held all the cards. I've learned to navigate this allergen-laden world with caution, treating every meal outing as a strategic operation. Alex, with his supportive demeanor, accompanies me through this culinary minefield, constantly reassuring me that my cautiousness is justified. Yet, Jane's subtle jabs persist, extending beyond the dinner table. Her texts carry a warning tone, reminding me that not everyone takes my conditions seriously. It's more than a mere jab. It's a reminder of vulnerability, a realization that my allergy is perceived as a weakness to be exploited. Dinners at Jane's house are orchestrated affairs, resembling a play where everyone knows their lines except for the unwitting lead. I, the daughter-in-law, I was the unpredictable element, the wild card capable of unintentionally stirring up a commotion with a single bite. Alex did his best to ease the situation, but there's only so much you can do when you're playing on someone else's home turf. On a particular evening, the tension hung in the air as heavily as the gravy on the table. Jane was bustling around, placing dish after dish on the table. I sat there with my plate empty, anxiously waiting to discern what I could eat without risking a hospital visit. Alex, in his ever-supportive manner, passed the green beans, urging, "They're just divine." Jane's voice dripped with sweetness that failed to reach her eyes. Eyeing the beans, I sensed something was off. "What's in them?" I asked. "Oh, just a touch of almond slivers for crunch," Jane replied, waving a dismissive hand. Halting Alex's reach, I said, "I can't eat those. Almonds are a no-go for me, Jane." Feigning surprise, a hand to her chest, she responded, "Oh dear, I must have forgotten. Silly me." Alex stood up, his chair scraping back. his voice firm with frustration. "Mom, this is serious. Liz could end up in the hospital." Jane's eyes narrowed slightly and she retorted, "I just wanted to make something nice. It's not my fault Liz has all these allergies." The room fell into an uncomfortable silence, forks pausing midair, and embarrassed glances exchanged. Mark, Alex's dad, attempted to diffuse the tension. "Let's just enjoy the meal, shall we? There's plenty Liz can eat." But the damage was done. The rest of the dinner passed in strained politeness, with Jane asking pointed questions about my allergies, as if she were jotting down notes for the next time. Later, when Alex and I were alone, he apologized. "I'm sorry, Liz. I should have double-checked everything before we came. Tired of feeling like a problem to be managed." I responded, "It's not your fault, but I'm starting to think your mom does these things on purpose." He didn't answer, and he didn't need to. We both knew the truth. Jane was serving up a side of malice with every meal, and I was the main course. I could always tell when Jane had been working on Alex. He'd get this distant look in his eyes, as if he were seeing through me, weighing her words against his own judgment. On this particular evening, a cloud seemed to settle over him, and I knew it before he even spoke. "My mom thinks we should consider." "Well, she thinks we might not be thinking about the future enough," Alex muttered, not meeting my eye as he fumbled with the TV remote. "The future?" I asked, a sinking feeling in my gut. "Yeah, kids and your health issues," he continued, the word issues hanging awkwardly in the air between us. "She talked to you about my allergies again, didn't she?" He sighed, setting the remote down. "She's just worried, Liz. She thinks it's a lot for us to handle, especially if we want a family." I bristled, asserting, "We've talked about this. I've managed so far, haven't I? And there are plenty of people with allergies who have kids." Alex ran a hand through his hair, a sign of stress. I know. It's just she has this way of making me doubt things." The room was quiet for a moment, the tension palpable. I reached for his hand, our fingers intertwining. "We're not fighting. We're on the same side, remember?" He nodded, pulling me into a hug. "You and me against the world, right?" "Right," I said. But as I held him, I couldn't shake the feeling that Jane's words were like weeds threatening to grow wild and choke the life out of the beautiful thing we had. It wasn't just my allergies that needed managing. It was the doubts that could seep into the cracks of even the strongest relationships. The news of my pregnancy was a happy surprise for Alex and me, but a complicated one for everyone else. When we announced it to his parents, Jane's reaction was like watching a robot trying to mimic human emotions. A pause, then a smile that didn't quite match the situation. "We're gonna have a baby, Mom," Alex said, his voice a mix of pride and caution. "That's wonderful," Jane managed to say, the words sounding foreign in her mouth. "We must have a family dinner to celebrate." Celebrations at Jane's were never just celebrations. But I saw the hopeful look in Alex's eyes the night of the dinner arrived, and the house buzzed with relatives. Jane was the perfect hostess, moving gracefully from guest to guest. When she reached us, her smile was practiced. "Congratulations, Liz. This is such a joyous occasion." "Thank you, Jane," I replied, trying to match her formality. "We're excited." Alex wrapped his arm around my waist, a silent thank you for playing along. As dinner approached, I felt the familiar anxiety. A table full of food was a minefield for me, but tonight I hoped would be different. The table was a feast, and I felt every eye on me as I hesitated, my hand hovering over the options. "Go on, dear," Jane urged. "Eat up." "You're eating for two now?" I smiled weakly, choosing the safest options, vegetables and rice, plain and simple. But as I reached for a slice of bread, Jane stopped me. "Actually, maybe not that one," she said quickly. "I'm not sure if the baker used soy flour." I paused, bread in hand, meeting her gaze. There was a flicker of something there. Concern, or perhaps it was a challenge. "Thank you for letting me know," I said, placing the bread down. However, warning bells were already ringing in my head. How did she know about the soy flour? It felt like too close a call, too perfect a save. The rest of the meal passed in a blur, with congratulations mingling with the clinking of glasses. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that Jane's hospitality was a veneer, concealing a trap set and waiting for just the right moment. The family dinner, meant to celebrate our future baby, was nothing short of a banquet. Jane had outdone herself, creating a spread that would make a Thanksgiving dinner look modest. However, My stomach was tied in knots. Not from hunger. Every dish felt like a potential hazard, a hidden enemy that could send me to the hospital. As we all took our seats, lively chatter filled the air, comprising the usual family gossip and stories. Jane, at the head of the table, presided over the feast like a queen in her court. She called everyone to attention with a gentle tap of her glass. Before we begin, I just want to say how thrilled we are to be celebrating Liz and Alex's upcoming addition to our family, Jane announced, her voice steady and clear. Applause and cheers followed, and I forced a smile, feeling Alex squeeze my hand under the table. "Thank you, everyone," I said. "We're really looking forward to this new chapter in our lives." The meal began, and I tentatively picked at my food, choosing the simplest items. Alex watched me, his brow furrowed with concern. "You doing okay?" he asked quietly. "Yeah, just being careful," I replied, pushing a roasted potato around my plate. Jane's eyes were on me, and I felt like a specimen under a microscope. "Liz, you haven't touched your salad. The dressing is on the side, just as you like it," she said, her voice tinged with forced cheerfulness. "Thank you, Jane. I'm just not much of an appetite tonight," I said, avoiding the salad that could easily contain hidden allergens. As the dinner wore on, tension grew. Every time Jane offered me something, my anxiety spiked, and the room felt hot, the walls closing in. Then came the cake, a beautiful confection with layers of sponge and cream that drew admiration from the room. Jane cut a slice and handed it to me with a smile that might have been genuine if I hadn't known better. "For the mom-to-be," she said. "I really shouldn't," I said, looking at the cake, then at Alex, then at Jane. "But it looks delicious." "Oh, come on, Liz. One little bite won't hurt. For the baby," Jane pressed, her voice as sweet as the icing. That's when Alex's dad, Mark, stepped in, swiftly knocking the plate from my hands. The cake tumbled to the floor, and stunned silence fell over the room. "What the hell, Dad?" Alex exclaimed, anger and confusion in his voice. Mark stood, his face pale but his voice firm. "I saw the label in the trash. That cake has peanut oil in it." To a room erupted in chaos. Jane's face showed shock, but her eyes betrayed something darker, fear, maybe guilt. Alex stood, his chair clattering behind him. "Mom, did you know about this?" Jane's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. In that moment, the truth became as clear as the danger on my plate. The room was dead silent after Mark's revelation, the dropped cake like a crime scene on the hardwood floor. Everyone's eyes were locked on Jane, who seemed to shrink under the collective gaze. "Mom? Is it true? Did you know?" Alex's voice cut through the tension, sharp and demanding. Jane looked away, her jaw clenched, and for the first time I saw a hint of fear in her eyes. Maybe she realized that her actions hadn't just endangered me, but jeopardized her relationship with her son, her reputation, everything. The rest of the evening was a blur of arguments, tears, and hushed conversations as the family tried to process what had happened. Alex and I left early, the weight of the evening heavy on our shoulders. We didn't speak much on the drive home. What was there to say? The truth was out, and with it, the facade of a polite, if not happy, family was shattered. The drive home was quiet, filled with a heavy silence, loaded with things left unsaid. When we finally walked through our front door, Alex and I just stood there, the echo of the night's drama still ringing in our ears. Alex was the first to break the silence. "I can't believe my own mother would do something like that," he said, his voice hollow. I sat down on the couch, the cushion failing to comfort me. "I know it's a lot to take in," he said, sitting beside me and taking my hands in his. "I'm so sorry, Liz. This is unforgivable." I looked at him, seeing the pain in his eyes, and my heart ached. "It's not your fault, Alex. We couldn't have known she'd go this far." But the truth was there, hanging between us. Jane had crossed a line, and there was no going back. The family was in pieces. Some stood by us, shocked and appalled by Jane's actions, while others struggled to wrap their heads around the reality of the situation. The next few days were a whirlwind. Alex's phone buzzed constantly with messages and calls from relatives expressing shock, support, and apologies. Through it all, there was deafening silence from Jane. No apologies, no explanations. Alex finally broke the news to me a week later. "My dad's left her. He can't get past what she did, he said, a twinge of something like regret in his tone. He said it's been a long time coming. I wasn't sure how to feel relief, sadness, pity. And Jane? I asked tentatively. She's not handling it well. She's alone now, Alex replied, a twinge of regret in his tone. We sat in our living room, the walls we'd painted together, the furniture we'd picked out during countless trips to the store. It was our home, filled with our memories, our love. Outside, there was a storm brewing, one that threatened to uproot everything we knew. In that moment, I realized that no matter what happened, we had each other. We were a team about to bring a new life into the world, and that was what mattered. I love you, Liz, Alex said, pulling me close. I love you too, I whispered back. The fallout from that night would linger, and the scars it left on our family would take time to heal. But as I looked at Alex, at the life we'd built and the future we were about to embark on, I knew that we'd weather any storm together. As for Jane, she was a chapter in our lives that we had closed, a story that we wouldn't let define us. From now on, it was just us, our baby, and the road ahead. Whatever it brought, we'd face it together.
Hey everyone, I'm Yasmin, and I want to share a story that sheds light on my incredibly entitled and eccentric mother-in-law, Jessica. My husband Kai suggested sharing this tale because he enjoys reading them from time to time. Before you find it odd, let me clarify that he's well aware of his mother's eccentricities, having been her first victim. Kai's upbringing involved Jessica, who divorced his father shortly after his birth. He experienced her craziness firsthand and distanced himself as much as possible. Unfortunately, Jessica's poor taste in men persisted, leading to another abandonment by Kai's father. While Kai's father paid child support initially, he later terminated his rights. I've never met the man and have no desire to. Claiming to have single-handedly raised Kai, Jessica exploited him to extract money from her family for an extended period. When they grew weary of supporting her, she found a job but continued to siphon money from Kai. During his teenage years, Jessica coerced him into working, all the while pocketing his earnings until he turned 18. Recognizing the need to break free, Kai took out student loans and secured a scholarship for college. That's where we crossed paths. Kai shared the harrowing stories of his mother's behavior, and I couldn't help but be furious on his behalf. I questioned how he could still be in contact with her. He explained, I was raised by a narcissist. She conditioned me to believe that taking care of her is my responsibility. Distressed by Kai's situation, I used my savings to kickstart his therapy. Although initially resistant, Kai eventually embraced the process, gaining confidence and slowly standing up to his manipulative mother. Recognizing the positive changes, I continued supporting him. Unsurprisingly, Jessica never liked me. During our first meeting, she accused me of being a gold digger who poisoned her son against her. I defended myself, highlighting that I used my money to help Kai access therapy. Over the years, Kai and I graduated, got married, and secured good jobs. Despite working hard for our success, Jessica persisted in her financial demands. She eventually got married to a disrespectful man named Frank, and Kai reluctantly agreed to rent her an apartment. When we bought a house, she expressed her satisfaction, stating, "Heave, I'm so happy that you finally bought a house. I was getting tired of living in an apartment." "So when can Frank and I move in?" "Excuse me, what are you talking about?" "Well, I'll be moving into your house with Frank. That's what I'm saying. Why should I live in an apartment when you are housing your wife for free?" "Jessica, we both bought this jointly. I literally co-own this place with Kai. I don't live here for free. You are the one who lives in the apartment for free since Kai pays the rent." "Watch your mouth, Jasmine. I don't tolerate disrespect from anyone. I'm talking to my son about his house. I didn't ask you anything. I have the right to talk since it's also my house you are talking about. You're not staying with us, and neither is Frank. That's for my son to decide, and he knows that it's his responsibility to take care of me." "I'm already taking care of you, Mom. You don't get to move into my house to raise me. That's not how it works, and there is no chance of an argument, so don't even try." "You're acting like an entitled brat, Keith. Your mom worked hard to raise you, and you need to take some responsibility for her. Now, be a good son and give us a copy of your key so that we can move in." "You don't get to say what I do with my house keys, Frank. Neither of you is even getting a copy of our keys. I'll say this for the last time, you two will not be moving into our house. That's it." You would think that's the end of it. Well, it isn't. For days, Frank and Jessica kept harassing us and guilting us. Jessica even said some horrible things to me because she thought I was manipulating Keith and making him abandon her. It was funny at first, but soon we got fed up. One day, Kay went to their apartment to drive it into their heads that they wouldn't be moving in. We thought our point got across since we stopped hearing from them. Problem solved. Well, not quite. A month after we moved into our house, we had a small vacation coming up. After saving for years, we finally decided to go on a break to celebrate our house purchase. It was supposed to be a relaxing vacation for the two of us by the beach. We both took time off and decided to take things easy for that week. We flew there and had a blast from the first day itself. But as evening came, something shocking happened. I got a notification from the Ring camera on my house's door. Yes, we did set up surveillance cameras before we went on vacation since we didn't ask anyone to house sit. We thought that it would be important. Now, I had no idea who would even show up at the door. The neighborhood is pretty safe, and we have lived there before. Hardly anything ever happened there, so I was curious why there was so much activity at the house. I opened my phone to see what the hell was going on there. What I found in the live camera footage shocked me. There I saw my dear mother-in-law Jessica and her new husband Frank moving into our freaking home. Yes, they somehow got into our house and brought 12 bags of clothes. Literally 12 freaking bags. They were moving into the guest room and setting up everything there. Jessica even went into the kitchen to make herself some food. I was shocked and angry at what I was witnessing. I knew that I needed to tell Keith immediately. So I called him over and said, "Keith, I have some news. I think we need to talk about it right now. Right now." "What's so important, Yasmin? We're on vacation. I'm kind of not in the mood for any serious stuff today." "Trust me, Keith, I'm not in the mood to deal with horrible people either. But this situation is dire and needs our immediate attention. I'm afraid it's about your mother. Mom's making trouble again." "Oh God, what is it this time? Did she manage to break into our house or something?" From the look I gave Keith, it became apparent to him that he wasn't off the mark. His eyes immediately turned into saucers as he tried to make sense of the situation. I pulled out my phone and showed him what Jessica and Frank were doing. He was shocked and looked very angry at what he was seeing. I mean, his joke turned out to be the truth. His mom broke into our new house and was moving in furniture with her husband. Keith looked a little pissed off and said, "You can leave it to my mother to surprise me in the worst way possible." Looks like she didn't take the hint at all. We made it clear that day that she won't be living with us. I'm even surprised as to how she got the keys to our house. It just blows my mind. Her new husband is a sleazy guy, Yasmin. We both know that. I'm afraid he may have gotten his hands on our keys and made a copy. I wouldn't put it past him. We will need to go back and change the locks. That's the only way we can make sure that they don't budge into our house anytime they like. But what do we do about this current problem? Do you have something in mind? Look, I know they are your parents and all, but I really want to call the cops on them. What they are doing is illegal and downright scary. They can't be trusted anymore. Either calling the cops and getting no contact with them is the best solution possible. I gave Keith some time to turn the idea in his head. I could see that he was thinking hard and had grim lines on his forehead. But it didn't take too long for him to come back with a response, and his response was way better than I imagined. He said, "You know what, Yasmin? Let's do it." "What? Are you sure about that? There'll be no going back once we do this, and the cops will drag your mom and Frank to the streets with all their things." "I know that, Yasmin. I've given them enough chances to improve themselves. They just betrayed my trust every time. I have to stop somewhere. There has to be some consequences. What they did today is not only a breach of our privacy but also illegal. I think it's time they realize they can't do whatever they want. Would you go no contact with them as well?" Of course, my reluctance to do that has already created a lot of problems. I should have done this a long time ago. I'm freaking stupid and thought Mom would grow some sense after I got married. Since that's not happening, I'm going to distance myself from them. It's the only way and I am actually feeling good about it. Okay then, if you're on board with it, let's proceed with that plan. But first, let's call your mom and give her a warning. Just a final chance to make this right. I don't have any hope, but we can get evidence that we didn't allow her in our house. Keith agreed with the plan and called his mother. She didn't pick up the first time through the security cameras. I could see that she was visibly annoyed and went to Frank. They discussed something before answering the call. When we rang the second time, she put the phone on loudspeaker so that Frank could join in as well. She said, "Hey Keith, how are you doing? Is the vacation going fine? You need to tell me what's going on over there." "I don't know what you're talking about. Everything is just breezy here. Nothing to worry about really." "Jessica, you and Frank breaking into our house is nothing to worry about." Jessica went quiet when I said that. On the security tapes, we could see that she tensed and looked at Frank again. I mean, Frank was better at fooling and manipulating people, so this was expected. Jessica wanted her new husband to come up with some plan. What are you even talking about, Yasmin? Kay, your wife has gone crazy. You need to shut her up. Don't talk to my wife like that. We know what you two are up to. With cameras in the house, both inside and out, there's no point in lying to us. We can see you on our phones right now. Wait, what? How dare you spy on us, Keith? This is unacceptable. What about our privacy? You should have been more thoughtful. It was ironic how Jessica was offended by the fact that we could see their activities on our screen. She talks about respecting people's privacy when she broke into someone's house and made it her own. I didn't know if Jessica was trying to deflect or if she was genuinely offended. I have a good guess that it's a little bit of both. Her words sparked something in me, and I said, "That's rich coming from you, Jessica. You are the one who broke into our private home when we clearly told you that you are not allowed in." "I don't care what you say, Yasmin. It's my son's house too, so I have the right to be here. I'm his mother and should be staying with him." "I already said no to that, Mom. Just because you're my mother doesn't mean you will go wherever I go. You already have an apartment that I pay for. Who wants to live in that tiny apartment when you have brought such a big house?" "You're turning into such a selfish man after getting married, Keith. This is unacceptable. You can't expect your own mother to live in an apartment while you enjoy a whole house with your wife. That decision is not up to you, Mom. You shouldn't have just packed up your stuff and moved into the house. How did you even get the keys?" Both me and Kay were troubled by this question and needed answers immediately. Also, we needed them to confess to their wrongs so that we could use that to report them to the police. And our hunch was right. Frank said, "Well, since you decided to be a brat and ignore your mother, I went and made a copy of your keys." "Who the hell told you to touch my keys? I didn't give you permission to do that." "I don't need your permission, Kai. I'm your stepdad. I have the authority to do what I think is right. You don't get to question me." "I don't care who you are to me, Frank. I'm a grown-ass man and don't need a parent. What you did was forgery, and both are offenses under the law." "Kai, how dare you talk to Frank like that? He only did this because he knew I was sad. A mother should have the keys to her son's house for emergencies and all, you know? For emergencies and breaking in whenever you want? You're insane, Jessica. You need to get off our property with all your stuff within an hour. If you don't, we will call the cops." That made Jessica and Frank look frightened. They visibly panicked and whispered something amongst themselves. Their panic was clear on their faces, and we could see that through the cameras. In the end, they said, "Don't threaten us, woman. This is not your house. This is my son's house. Only he gets to make those decisions. This house belongs to both Yasmin and me, and we both want you to get out before I'm forced to call the cops." "Trust me, Mom, that will be ugly." "What an ungrateful brat you are, Keith. How can you threaten to kick out your mom?" "She was given a warning and didn't listen. Now both of you will be facing consequences. You have exactly 1 hour to vacate my house before I call the cops. Remember that I have you on surveillance and I will know what you are doing." Frank and Jessica started to yell at us when we hung up. We didn't want to go into an argument with them anymore. Their entitled brains were not meant to participate in conversations or healthy discussions. They didn't care about anything but themselves. We gave them 1 hour while we put all the proof into a folder. Through the cameras, we could see that they were having a discussion but didn't budge. Instead, Jessica started to unpack her bags. That made us both angry as hell. As the hour passed, we called the police with all the evidence we had. Thankfully, they took us seriously and went to our house. We saw the whole fiasco unfold in front of our house. The cops went there and knocked at the door. Jessica and Frank opened the door and immediately faked being confused. After the officers told them everything, they called us and sang a different tune. They said, "Kay, why was there a need to call the cops? We just want to live with our son. Why are you making things so difficult? Tell the cops that this was all a misunderstanding." "I don't want you living with me, Mom. I said that 100 times now. Stop being so freaking entitled. Leave before the cops arrest you and we are forced to press charges." "Kay, don't do this. Please look, we have nowhere to go. You need to let us stay here. Just tell the cops to leave. We will have a calm discussion about this once you come back." "Absolutely not, Mom. You need to back up and go to your apartment. I want my house empty today and right now, Keith." "Actually, we can't go back to the apartment. I canceled the lease and sold my furniture. We really have nowhere to go. I thought that she wouldn't mind living with us, so I canceled the lease myself." The audacity of this woman shocked me to the core. She canceled her lease because she thought she could force us to house her. She was freaking insane. Heath was boiling with rage and ready to scream at her sorry ass. He said, "You went behind my back and canceled your lease? What the freaking hell, Mom? You know what? That's not my problem. I don't care where you go. You need to vacate my house." No, Keith. Please listen to me. I've nowhere to go. Don't kick us out. I'm your mother. Do you want your mother to be homeless? You made yourself homeless, Mom, since you don't want to stay in a rented apartment anymore. I won't give you rent money anymore. I'm freaking done. You can take your new man and figure out something for yourself. Get out of my house and don't try to contact me again. At this point, Jessica was literally crying and begging to make us hear her out. She even cried to me and brought up my dead mother to guilt me. They had the very opposite reaction than what she expected. Me and Key got so mad that we shouted at them and hung up. We immediately blocked the numbers because they crossed all our boundaries in one day and somehow made things worse than ever. The cops stayed back at the house and made sure that Jessica and Frank left. I called a mutual friend to help house it until we came back. She also assured me that she would call a locksmith to change our door lock the next day. She's a friend from college, and we trust her a lot. We knew that she would make sure our house was safe. She lived in an apartment, so it was easy for her to come to the house. Frank and Jessica left and went to God knows where. My guess is they spent the night at the hotel and bought new phone numbers to harass us. It didn't work. No relative took their side either because they knew Jessica well enough, and they didn't want to be in her drama. Also, they told her in no uncertain terms that they wouldn't house or help her out in any way. That made Jessica focus her attention back on us. For the rest of our vacation, we kept our phones switched off. We opened our phones once daily to check for emergencies, and that's it. We also only called our friend to make sure everything was all right. Yes, Jessica and Frank did show up again and tried to get in. They left after the friend threatened to call the cops again. We are thinking of sending a cease and desist letter before they escalate their behavior. Thankfully, they didn't want to know why. When we got back from vacation, we found out that Frank had decided to leave Jessica. Why, you may ask? Because she couldn't house and feed him for free anymore. Jessica was devastated and begged her son to talk to her. She finally realized that she needed her son for money. He didn't soften at all. He stuck to the no-contact decision that is still in place today. The last we know from family is that Jessica rented a trailer and still works at the retail store with no hope of retirement in sight.